Teachers, what's the craziest family lore a child has randomly dropped on you? A second grader once explained why his dad wouldn't be home for Christmas, and he said it with the calm voice kids use when they're explaining something obvious. He told me his dad was in a big timeout for adults. I asked what he meant, expecting a silly answer, but he nodded like this was serious. Then he added, he made the judge really mad. I asked what a big timeout looked like, and without missing a beat, he said, "It's like a room, not a chair." The way he described it made it sound like a normal punishment, just upgraded for grown-ups. He didn't look sad or scared or embarrassed. He just accepted it like weather. Meanwhile, every adult listening was trying to keep their face normal and their voice steady. Next story. A kid told me, completely casually, that his bearded dragon died. I said I was sorry and asked what happened, expecting something like old age or an accident. He shrugged and said, "My brother put him in the freezer." I froze, but the kid didn't. He immediately tried to explain it like it was a simple mistake, saying his brother was supposed to put away pizza rolls and somehow grabbed the wrong thing. The way he said it made it sound like mixing up a TV remote, not a living creature. Then he sighed and added, "We buried him, but we messed that up too." Apparently they buried the bearded dragon, and later put lasagna on top of the grave like it was just another spot in the yard. He told the whole story like a normal family memory, and the adults around him were silently trying to process it. Next story. A fourth grader was talking about his family like everything was totally normal. He mentioned siblings, weekend plans, and then out of nowhere he said, "That used to be my brother." I asked what he meant, thinking he was joking or talking about stepfamily stuff. He looked at me like I didn't understand the obvious and said, "His dad cheated on my mom, so he's not my brother anymore." No anger, no tears, no dramatic build-up, just a statement, like he was explaining how rules work. The way he said "used to be" hit harder than the sentence itself. It was like he'd already decided that love and family could be canceled, like a subscription. He went right back to his conversation afterward, while I sat there trying to keep my face calm. Next story. When I was around 10, my friend and I started noticing something weird. Our parents always went fishing on the same weekends, like it was a scheduled tradition. At first it sounded normal, but the pattern didn't feel right. Then we realized they weren't fishing. My friend's dad and my friend's best friend's mom were having an affair, and the fishing trips were the cover story. The creepiest part was how long the lie worked because adults said it confidently and kids don't question routines. Eventually, we started doing the math in our heads, like kids do when something feels off. We even realized there was a chance the girls could be half-sisters. Before anything could fully explode, the dad suddenly died. After that, the mom moved away, and everyone acted like it never happened. But the fishing weekends made sense forever after. Next story. A child once looked me straight in the face and said, "My mom wanted to abort me." There was no joke in it, no dramatic tone, no warning. It just landed in the middle of a normal moment, like it was a fun fact, the way kids announce their favorite color. I didn't even know how to respond because there isn't a safe, normal adult sentence that fits after that. I froze, and the kid didn't notice at all. They kept talking like nothing happened, like they'd just shared the weather. The room went weirdly quiet because other adults had heard it too. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavy. It felt like everyone's brain was scrambling to protect the child's feelings while also processing what was just said. The kid stayed calm the whole time, which somehow made it hit even harder. Next story. A kid explained their home life with brutal honesty, like they were reading a basic summary out loud. They said, "My mom smoked crack when she was pregnant with me, and that's why she doesn't live with us." Then they immediately went back to whatever they were doing, completely unbothered, like they'd just explained why it was raining. There was no sadness in their voice, no anger, no need to soften it. It sounded like something they'd heard repeated so many times it became normal. Every adult in the room needed a moment to recover because we were hearing it for the first time, but the child had probably been living with it for years. That's what made it so hard to respond. You don't want to overreact and make them feel wrong for saying it, but you also can't pretend it's nothing. The kid didn't ask for comfort, they just stated it and moved on. Next story. A preschooler announced, loud and proud, "My mom isn't wearing underwear today." It came out with the same excitement kids use when they think they've discovered a secret. Before anyone could respond, they started doing a weird little side-to-side hip wiggle, like they were demonstrating evidence for their claim. Every adult froze instantly. It was one of those moments where the child thinks they're being hilarious and informative, and the adults are having a silent panic attack. No one wanted to laugh because it would encourage it, but no one could react strongly either because it would make it even bigger. The kid kept smiling, completely confident, enjoying the attention without understanding why the room suddenly felt tense. Meanwhile, the teacher was doing the mental math of how to redirect the conversation, keep the class calm, and later explained to the parent that their child had just announced private information to everyone like it was show and tell. Next story. In a rich Montessori preschool, 2 boys kept grabbing their hips and doing extremely inappropriate movements during class time. At first, the staff tried gentle redirection, thinking it was just kids being silly or copying something from cartoons. But they kept doing it again and again, like it was a routine they were proud of. The teachers couldn't figure out where it came from because it didn't look like random kid behavior. It looked like imitation. Eventually, the boys explained it in their own blunt way. Their dad had been watching something they definitely weren't supposed to see, and they had copied it without understanding what it meant. That's the kind of explanation that makes every adult's stomach drop, because it instantly turns a funny classroom moment into a serious parenting issue. The worst part is how innocent they were about it. They weren't being bad. They were just repeating what they'd learned, like a dance move. Next story. A kid brought an adult bedroom item from home for show and tell like it was a prized toy. He held it up proudly and yelled, "Look, a lightsaber!" Then he started swinging it around, making full sound effects. Zing, zing! Like he was in an action movie. The whole class exploded into laughter because to them, it really did look like a ridiculous sci-fi prop. The teacher's face went completely blank in that instant way adults react when their brain short circuits. There was no graceful way to handle it because the kid was so confident and excited. The teacher calmly walked over, took it away as gently as possible, and tried to redirect the class without letting the chaos grow. Meanwhile, the adults nearby were fighting for their lives, trying not to collapse from shock. The kid looked genuinely confused about why his cool show and tell got taken so fast. Next story. A 3rd grader joined our class and kept using a different last name than what was on the paperwork. At first, it seemed like a small mistake, so I asked her why she was saying a different name. She shrugged like it wasn't a big deal and said, "My mom changed it." I nodded, expecting a simple reason, maybe a remarriage or a family preference. Then she added, completely calmly, "My dad left us for another woman." No emotion, no dramatic pause, just a clean, factual statement. She didn't cry or look angry. She said it like she was explaining why she got a new backpack. That was the part that stayed with me. The way kids sometimes accept a life-changing situation as just an update. Like the last name changed, the dad changed, and now this was just the new normal. Then she went right back to whatever she was doing, leaving the adults to silently process the weight of it. Next story. A kid once said to someone with a soft smile, "I got pregnant on accident, but I had you on purpose." The sentence didn't even sound like it came from a child. It sounded like something overheard from adults and repeated perfectly. Everyone went quiet because the words were sweet, but also confusing in a way that made your brain stall. Then the kid added, "Because I really wanted you," as if they were comforting someone. The tone was gentle, like they were trying to be kind, and that made it hit even harder. The child didn't seem to realize they'd just said something deeply grown up. They weren't trying to shock anyone. They were simply repeating a phrase that meant love in their world. Adults in the room didn't know whether to smile, correct them, or sit in stunned silence. It was one of those moments where a child accidentally reveals the exact kind of conversations happening at home. Next story. A child told someone at school that they had a video of their mom cheating. At first, people assumed it was just a kid exaggerating or repeating something they didn't understand, because children say wild things all the time. But the kid kept insisting, calm and confident, like it was a simple fact. Eventually, it became clear they weren't making it up. They had actually recorded it and sent it to their dad. That's what made everyone's stomach drop. Not just the cheating, but the reality that a child had witnessed it, processed it, and acted on it like an adult. The most shocking part was the kids' tone. They didn't sound emotional or scared. They talked about it like they were sharing a funny clip they found online. That casualness was the creepiest part, because it meant this was normalized in their head. Meanwhile, every adult hearing it was mentally racing through the same thought. This is way too heavy for a child to carry. Next story, I once complimented a first grader's winter coat because it looked warm and new. She smiled proudly and said, "My mom walked into someone's house and got it for me." At first, I thought she meant a hand-me-down or a neighbor helping out, but she kept going. "That's how I got my boots too," she added, like she was explaining a normal shopping trip. I asked if it happened a lot, and she nodded happily. Then she said, "Yeah, especially before we visit Daddy in prison." And the way she said it was the part that shocked me most. She beamed and added, "We're going this weekend." Like it was a fun family outing. She didn't understand why the adults suddenly got quiet. In her world, this was routine. Clothes appear, Dad is in prison, weekend visits happen. She wasn't embarrassed, she was excited, and that made it feel even heavier because it showed how kids adapt to anything when it's their normal. Next story. A child once explained why their dad wasn't picking them up and said it with complete confidence. "He's busy taking pictures of his butt." The entire room went silent like someone hit pause on life. Adults stared at each other, trying to keep a straight face because laughing would make it worse, but reacting too strongly would also make it worse. The kid didn't see the problem. To them, it was a normal explanation, like, "He's at work." Later, we found out the dad had a colonoscopy, and the family had tried to explain it in kid-friendly language. But it landed terribly. The child repeated it exactly as they understood it, which is how kids work. They don't filter. They just deliver information. The funniest part was also the worst part. They were so innocent about it. They didn't mean to embarrass anyone. They were simply reporting facts as their brain had stored them. Meanwhile, every adult stood there wishing they could vanish into the floor. Next story. A kid told me, "My friends said my daddy loves me more than my mommy. I thought it was just playground drama, the kind that sounds dramatic but has no real consequences." I was about to give the usual gentle advice about not listening to other kids when they added, completely casual. So, I threw a porch chair through our window. The tone was dead serious, like that was the logical next step. I didn't even know what expression my face made, but I remember the pause afterward felt unreal. The kid didn't seem angry anymore. They were calm, like the action had already solved the problem. The scary part wasn't just the violence, it was the certainty, like they believed emotions should be handled with immediate destruction. It made me realize how quickly a child can absorb chaos from home and treat it as normal conflict resolution. After that, it was impossible to unhear. Every adult in earshot suddenly had the same thought. This isn't a funny kid story. This is a warning sign disguised as a confession. Next story. A babysitter told me a kid randomly dropped a detail mid-dinner that stopped everyone's fork in the air. The kid said their dad doesn't live with them because when they were a toddler, he tried to hide drugs in the child's diaper. The kid explained it like a family story they'd heard repeated, not like a traumatic event. He got caught, the police took him away, and a judge ordered he wasn't allowed contact anymore. The child said all of this while calmly eating steak and green beans like they were reciting something from a picture book. That calm delivery is what makes stories like this so unsettling. Kids don't always understand the weight, they just repeat facts the way they know them. The adults at the table had to pretend they weren't shocked because you don't want the child to feel like they said something wrong, but inside everyone was spiraling. It wasn't gossip, it was reality, served with dinner. Next story. During a private tutoring session at someone's house, the child casually said, "Mommy is sleeping in a different room because it isn't Daddy's baby in her tummy." They delivered it with the same tone a kid uses to announce what's for lunch. No hesitation, no awkwardness, just a simple explanation of the household atmosphere. Meanwhile, the adult hearing it had to keep their face neutral because any reaction would immediately teach the child that they'd said something explosive. The room felt different after that sentence, like the air changed shape. The kid went on with schoolwork like nothing happened, but the adult's brain was stuck on that one line, trying to process how much a child can know without fully understanding it. It also made the adult suddenly aware of every quiet detail in the house, the distance, the tension, the careful silence adults sometimes create around kids. That one sentence rewrote the whole context of the tutoring session, and there was no way to go back to normal small talk afterward. Next story. A little girl kept talking about someone named Jordy, and the details were oddly specific. She said he whispered mean things through the backyard fence, made faces at her, scared away birds, and even made her cat stop going outside. At first, it sounded like a neighborhood kid being a nuisance. But when the dad heard it, he brushed it off like she was making things up. Later, someone mentioned it to her mom, expecting her to say, "Oh yes, that neighbor kid." Instead, the mom looked completely confused. The next-door house was empty, and had been empty since they moved in months ago. That's when the story stopped being a funny kid complaint and turned into something unsettling. The child wasn't giggling. She sounded serious, even annoyed, like this Jordy was a real part of her daily life. The weirdest part is how normal she acted while describing it, like she was reporting a real person everyone should already know. Next story. A child described a parent's absence like it was a formal school announcement. They said, "My mom is on a government-mandated vacation." The phrase sounded fancy, like a special trip, and the kid said it with the same confidence they'd use for "she's at work." But the adults listening immediately understood what the child didn't. That wording was probably the safest version of a painful truth. The kid wasn't trying to be funny. They were repeating the explanation they'd been given word for word like it was official. That's what made it hit so hard. It was polished language hiding something serious, and the child had no idea. They seemed proud of the phrasing, like it made their family situation sound normal. The adults had to keep their faces steady and respond gently, because you don't want to crush a kid with the reality they're being protected from. But the phrase stayed in everyone's head because it was both innocent and heartbreaking at the same time. Next story. Someone described being little and hearing gunshots outside like it was a memory that never left their body. Their mom grabbed them and their sister and shoved them into the dryer, telling them to stay silent no matter what they heard. They squeezed in together, trapped in the dark metal space, trying to breathe quietly while chaos happened outside. The way the story was told wasn't dramatic or attention-seeking. It was calm, like the person was describing something ordinary that happened once upon a time. But you could feel how heavy it really was. The dryer wasn't a hiding spot like in cartoons. It was cramped, cold, and terrifying. Every sound outside became amplified in their imagination. The scariest part was realizing their mom made that choice instantly, like she knew exactly what danger sounded like. That kind of quick decision comes from experience, not luck. Even years later, the person said they could still remember the feeling of waiting in the dark, listening and not knowing if they would come out. Next story. A kid proudly talked about a family wedding like it was the biggest event in the world. They described outfits, food, and who danced, and then casually said, "My mom couldn't come because she's a guest of the county." The teacher just stared for a second because the phrase sounded polite and official, but carried a meaning that adults instantly recognized. The kid didn't understand why it was strange. In their mind, it was a normal reason someone misses an event, like having to work late. The child even sounded proud of how grown up it sounded, like they were repeating the proper explanation. That's what made it unsettling. The kid had been given a clean, sanitized label for something harsh, and they carried it around like it was ordinary. Adults in the room had to respond carefully, because you can't ask too many questions without turning it into a moment the child will remember forever. The kid just kept talking, unaware they'd dropped a life-size truth in one small sentence. Next story. A child tried explaining their parents' divorce and confidently called it divortion, like it was a scientific process. They said their dad moved out because their mom used his toothbrush to shave her butt hair. The child didn't whisper it. They didn't look embarrassed. They announced it like they were explaining why the family got a new couch. Adults in earshot had to hold their breath and control their facial expressions because the urge to react was immediate. The kid's confidence made it 10 times worse. The way they said it implied they'd heard the story repeated many times at home, probably during arguments, until it became the official reason in the child's mind. To them, it was just cause and effect. Toothbrush incident, dad moved out, family changed. It's funny in a shocking way, but also uncomfortable, because it shows how children absorb private adult drama and retell it as public information without understanding boundaries. After that moment, nobody could look at a toothbrush the same way. Next story. A kid said, "My mom is in jail, but her phone isn't broken," like they were correcting a misunderstanding. Then they leaned in and whispered, "She just can't call from phone number 2. The child said it like they were sharing a clever life hack, like switching devices fixes the problem. Adults immediately understood what the kid didn't: jail phone rules, restrictions, and the reality behind that innocent whisper. The kid wasn't trying to be sad. They were trying to sound confident and informed, like they had insider knowledge. That's what made it so unsettling. The child had clearly been navigating this situation long enough to know details, but not long enough to understand the weight of it. The whisper added another layer, like it was a secret the child felt important for knowing. Everyone listening had to respond carefully because you can't crush a kid with the truth of what phone number 2 really represents. The kid just smiled like they'd helped solve a problem. Next story. A kid said their mom went to prison when they were 8, and the way they said it was almost casual, like it was a milestone in a timeline. Then, like it was a random extra detail, they added that she got arrested with a car trunk full of drugs. There was no dramatic pause, no tears, no anger. The kid just stated it like a fact they'd memorized. That emotionless delivery was the part that hit hardest, because it showed how children adapt to heavy realities when they have no choice. It wasn't a shocking confession to them. It was their normal. Adults nearby didn't know what to say, because any reaction might make the child feel exposed or judged. The kid didn't ask for sympathy. They didn't act like they were sharing trauma. They just mentioned it and moved on, as if this information lived in the same mental space as their favorite TV show. That's what makes stories like this linger. You can hear the calm voice, and you realize the child has carried it longer than anyone should. Next story. A student casually dropped, "My mother got arrested for dealing heroin," like they were explaining why they moved houses. Then they kept talking, saying their grandparents had to raise them, and the grandparents were brutally honest about everything. If someone asked where the mom was, the grandparents didn't soften it with pretty words. They just told the truth, no sugarcoating. The kid repeated it the same way, direct, factual, and strangely calm. That's what made the whole thing feel heavier. The child wasn't trying to shock anyone. They were simply repeating the reality they lived with. Adults listening had to fight the urge to gasp or ask too many questions, because kids can feel judgment immediately. The kid didn't look for comfort. They just stated the situation and continued like it was a normal biography detail. The scariest part is how normal it sounded coming from them, like the world had taught them early that chaos is just another routine. It stayed with everyone because it wasn't a story. It was a life. Next story. A child told someone on a kindergarten field trip that their grandmother was actually a wolf and lived in the woods. The child wasn't giggling or telling it like a fairy tale. They said it with full confidence, like they were sharing family information everyone should already know. They explained it like grandma simply had 2 modes, normal family visits and wolf in the woods mode. Adults tried to smile politely, thinking it was imaginative play. But the child kept going with steady certainty, adding details like it was obvious. The thing that made it creepy wasn't the content. It was the seriousness. Kids usually give you a hint when they're joking. This child didn't. They acted like the adults were the confused ones. For the rest of the trip, the phrase, "Grandma is a wolf," floated in the air, half funny and half unsettling. It made everyone remember how kids blend fantasy and reality so naturally that you can't always tell where it starts. And once a child says something with that much confidence, it's hard to shake it off completely. Next story. A preschooler said, "Grandpa got mad at mommy because she drank too much red juice and threw up on the table." The child said it with the same energy as announcing they had cereal for breakfast. No shame, no whispering, just a loud, confident report. Adults immediately had to process what red juice probably meant, because kids often rename adult things with innocent words. The kid didn't understand why everyone suddenly got quiet. To them, it was a simple chain of events. Red juice, throwing up, grandpa mad. The way they delivered it made it clear this wasn't a one-time slip. It sounded like a story told at home, maybe argued about, maybe repeated, until it became part of the child's normal vocabulary. Adults tried to redirect the conversation quickly, because preschoolers don't stop once they start, but the sentence had already landed. It was funny in a shocking way, but also sad, because it showed the child had witnessed a messy adult moment and stored it like a regular memory. The adults left that day knowing far more about the family's private life than they ever wanted to know.